Hello, everyone. My name is Kurt Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. Today, we're honored to have Claudette Zepeda, an award-winning chef, culinary entrepreneur, and celebrated culinary anthropologist known for her fearless approach to regional Mexican cuisine. With over 20 years of experience in restaurant kitchens and extensive travels throughout Mexico and the world, Claudette has developed a vast knowledge of indigenous ingredients and cross-cultural cuisine. As the founder and creative director of Chispa Hospitality, she oversees innovative food concepts in San Diego, Nashville, Australia, and Mexico. Her newest restaurant, Leu Leu, is a love letter to San Diego, blending global flavors with the region's beach bungalow culture. Claudette has received national acclaim with glowing reviews from the New York Times, inclusion on Esquire's Best New Restaurants list in both 2018 and 2021, and recognition on the Michelin Bib Gourmand list. She was named Eater San Diego and San Diego Union Tribune's Chef of the Year in 2018 and was James Beard Best Chef West semifinalist in 2019. You may also recognize her from her many television appearances, including Top Chef Season 15 and Top Chef Mexico Season 2, Iron Chef Quest for an Iron Legend, Iron Chef Mexico, Bobby's Triple Threat, and as a guest chef on Selena Plus Chef Christmas Special. Beyond the kitchen, Claudette is a champion for social impact. Through her initiative, Viva La Vida, she helps Mexican women establish micro businesses to support their families. And in 2024, she expanded her mission with a fund to help Hispanic women break free from generational poverty in the U.S. Get ready for an inspiring conversation about culinary innovation, cultural storytelling, and the making of a difference through food. And there she is. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
What an intro. Can I just catch my breath there for a moment?
I
My
know it's like
Lord.
I want to grow into my shirt.
No, I absolutely love sometimes it's hard not to get somewhat emotional because you wonder, and I've probably read the intro 20 times and the impact of how much you're doing and how much you've done and how much you're probably going to do is really, really amazing. And we'll dive into that. We have a little bit of a connection with San Diego and San Diego State University, as my sister attended there. But first, I have to comment on the studio, the cooking studio where you're sitting, which is very unique to our show. You've got I see a coffee maker, super
Yeah,
important,
yeah.
right?
The
You,
lifeline.
it, yeah, yeah, it should be an IV, right? Like just,
Yeah. This is
and
the defibrillator for chefs.
oh my gosh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. I've had 3 lattes too, so I'm off and running. I can't, it's a little blurry. Tell me what books you have over your shoulder.
Uh, I
Important
have
to me.
Ottolenghi. The comfort. I was blessed with the ability to MC him when he came into San Diego, and we went to the Spreckles
Wow.
Theater, and I did his whole book tour here in San Diego.
Wow. Wow.
That was huge. So I have Ottolenghi with all of my notes. I'm a huge note taker nerd, so all of these
Oh, my
post-its
teachers would love you. Oh my gosh, look
and
at
like
that.
the flashcards laminated. Like I'm a nerd.
That is so great.
I have Carolina Gellin's Pass the Plate. I have Nini Nguyen's Dak Biet and Kush Shaw's Amrakan.
Always learning, right? The
Oh,
teacher is always learning.
yes.
Absolutely love that. Love that. So, we have so much to talk about today, Chef. And our producer, Noelle, lives in San Diego. So we had to have you on the show. She went to Lulu just a few months ago and continues to talk about her experience. And, as I, troll your Instagram site, it looks like you had a real nice turnout for Mother's Day, which can arguably be the busiest, craziest day in the restaurant business. How did it go? Prefix dinner, right?
It was a prefix dinner and it was a dinner. I mean, I think you can attest to the fact that chefs, we have a little PTSD when it comes to Easter brunch and Mother's Day brunch.
A little.
I've had walk-ins fail the night before Mother's Day
Of
brunch.
course. Of course.
Uh, and at Lulu, we have a micro kitchen. It's no gas, induction only. So I have 4 induction burners and one rational combi oven that it with a half sheet tray combi oven. So we're already like we're on an uphill swing when we do anything of that scale. So I thought, you know what? Hashtag F brunch. I don't want to do brunch. I said, but what if we did dinner and we celebrated, women? Because as a woman, and I have a lot of really, close girlfriends. With Mother's Day it's a hard day, and some of us don't have amazing relationships with as with motherhood or our mothers. So we took a different approach with Lulu, and we said, how about we celebrate the divine feminine and celebrate all women and make a menu that is a little cheeky, and it kind of traverse all the globe in flavors, but always landing in the rootedness of me, which is Mexico. So like third course was 2 different moles. It was one with roses and one with star anise, like Chinese 5 spice spice blend. And it was amazing. We had 90 covers, which again, for a restaurant that has no walk-in, a 3-door refrigerator and an expo line with like a low boy. We have a one low boy and then one sandwich shop. That's it. Running 2 menus essentially. Saturday we ran a regular menu with 13 items on it, and then Sunday we did Mother's Day, which a whole new dishes that like it's it is a miracle what we have been able to do at Lulu. So it was beautiful to see. We had a beautiful chocolate and dessert table that everyone just kind of attacked, which was really comical. Like, you know, women, everyone wants to call us demure, but if you saw that chocolate table at the end, I was like, what happened? It looked like it was
It- it-
attacked
you know
on
what I get so excited about? It's just so fun to chat with a chef because the language low boy covers, I absolutely love it, right? Listen, 90 covers is a lot for any night, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
3 course, 5 course, 6 course, it's a lot of people coming on a very, very special day. I have to ask, we had Gavin Kaysen on the show some time ago, and I followed him for a long, long time. And, I really got enamored with him during the pandemic when, he came into your living room and into your kitchen with his family, and he was really transparent and genuine. And I see you guys on social media. Can you talk about that relationship a little bit? How did you guys get together?
Gavin came into my life in 2006, I want to say.
Oh,
My
wow.
daughter, yeah, we've known each other for a very long time. I was a pastry cook in La Jolla, while he was doing his road to Bocuse. I think he was
Yeah.
2004 or something like that, 2005. And San Diego really rose up to the occasion to support him on his road to the Bocuse. So we raised money, we did dinners, and we did all that stuff when I was, and I didn't really know much about him except for, there was this young kid, he was 27 at the time, that was really, was going to go to France and represent the US. And, the rest is history on that road for him. But shortly after he got back, he needed a pastry chef, and I was 6 months into being a pastry cook, and my pastry chef was that I was working for at the time was a complete tyrant, and I was very, 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 very like just ran ragged. And then he said, "You know what? I think you should go work for Gavin. I think you're ready." And I was like, "I'm not ready. I'm not ready." And he said, Gavin he's gonna be the leader you need, blah, blah, blah. He basically set me free, which was amazing because I needed to get out of that kitchen. And I walked into Gavin's kitchen, a little bit of a, doe-eyed kid, 22 years old with 2 kids at that time. And it was, unbeknownst to me, it was exactly what I needed to learn in leadership styles. And the rest is history as far as our friendship is concerned. He is my lifeline. I text him within 10 seconds, he texts me back. His birthday is on Mother's Day, Mexican Mother's Day. So I text him on Mother's Day, and so I tell him happy Mother's Day, happy birthday. And then he texts me on Father's Day. Like we just he's just
It's
good
it's
people.
That's just great. That's such a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that. It ironically, and the story continues. Just last week, we had Stephanie De Palma on the
Mm-hmm.
show, and she
Yeah.
was the latest,
Yeah.
greatest over at Bocuse. And
Yeah.
I know that competition's been going on for many years, but you'd have to almost argue that Gavin, his involvement really took in Thomas Keller and all, really took it to another level.
Yeah.
And
Well, Danielle asked him, "You want to go again?" And he said, "No, but I want to start a foundation for to help other American chefs win." And again, the rest
mentor,
is
yeah,
history.
yeah,
Hmm.
just beautiful.
Yeah.
I have to, this isn't on the script, so I'm gonna throw you all kinds of kudos here because I mentioned this briefly when we got going, but we try to do as much research as we can. Celebrities like we know about, but we like to dig in a little bit. And I was just obsessed because we do some online, teaching as well at Escoffier. But I just want those who are listening to go to Chef Claudette Zepeda at or .com and then /cooking club and check out this cooking club. And I'd love for you to kind of repeat what you told me earlier. So basically, you have these beautiful, beautiful recipes, and you have the ability to grab one and sign up for it, and then you get the actual recipes via email, and you get videos of you walking us through that. And what I'm fascinated by, like I told you earlier, is that sometimes in the kitchens of a culinary school, the content comes very fast, right? And not everyone is courageous enough to say, oh, could you repeat that? Or could I didn't quite get that. And so this idea of pausing, right, so that you can better understand is fascinating. But would you mind reminding our listeners, how the culture cooking club came to be? I just love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I mean the name comes from Boy George. I just was like had I love that.
No way. No
Yeah.
way.
That's the
That's
the
my
name.
generation.
Yeah.
Yes.
I grew up, in that the punk movement, the 80s rock. I love it. So that was kind of the inspiration for the name. But basically it was I missed human interaction during the pandemic and I wanted to teach people the how approachable Mexican cuisine could be. And if you
Yeah.
had someone that made you feel safe, one in your personal home environment, but two to ask the questions and to interrupt the class because it was completely like allowed. So they're long formatted videos. So it's an hour and a half to 2 hours on some of them. I teach multiple recipes. So in one cooking class, you can get three, four to make sure you get, perception of value is important to me. So I didn't want people to be like, that's how much it costs for one. So I said, you know what, let's just do a full dinner. So the albondigas ones that we were talking about earlier, albondigas al chipotle, it's literally my mother's recipe. And I walk everyone through it. And anyone that has any sort of hesitance, since I only allow about 20 people per class, I could see it in their eyes when they want to ask a question. I would stop the class and I say, I need to see your bowl. Let me see your bowl. And we would go to that interaction.
No pressure. Yeah.
Well, but if that person had a question, 9 out of 10 times, other people do as well, and
Sure.
or they give up because I'm going too fast. So it was beautiful. I have now friends that I had never met before, and now they follow me on social media, and they were on at every single class. So I think that I can never underestimate the power of humanity and like connection when it comes to food. It's crazy.
So well said. And the power of the classroom too. We call what you're doing in many ways flipping the classroom, right? So you're not talking at students, you're talking with students, and you're pausing and you're allowing them to find their voice so that they can ask the questions that help them, proceed. So really well done. I love it. Well, we speaking of love, we have to talk about the new culinary adventure we call it Leu Leu.
Mm.
A quote that I read from San Diego Magazine. Um, and I love this idea of a 1930s bungalow, right? I'm thinking of, black and white movies and, just so chill. In that article, it says, and I quote, the Lulu food is anchored in her Mexican American roots, but it's also Mediterranean and Moroccan, Eastern, and whatever the heck because that's how chefs cook for their friends.
Mhm.
Unbelievable statement. Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Lulu is really special. Lulu is we talk about her, my partners and I talk about her like you would a ship. You know, a ship is considered a her and you or a
Yeah.
car. Restaurants to me are very, very feminine in their way because they're hospitable. It's a warm environment. It's where you go to get nutritional sustenance. So in many ways, she is the womb, she is the mother. So Lulu is this human being in our mind and our creative flow that we just like, what would Lulu's, living room feel like? And what would Lulu cook for her friends? And she was this party girl. And I kind of see like this Gidget, Bridget Bardot, like sexy,
Yes. Yes.
audacious babe that is a surfer, but has like the most eclectic human beings as friends. And that particular space used to be a roadside motel in the 50s and 60s where the Rat Pack hung out. They would go down to Del Mar to the racetracks and then they would party at the roadside motel. You know, lore goes that that's where their girlfriends would stay while they went with their wives to Del Mar and then would come back and party with their girlfriends. So imagine that, like that was what was coming through my mind when I was developing the menu. And I said, oh my God, like I'm obsessed. I collect cookbooks and I'm obsessed with this like 60s cocktail culture also, like how everyone ate everything off of like sticks and forks and it was all mini bites. Um, and no one really ate because everyone was smoking cigarettes to be skinny. So there's this like fabulous air of like ironic food consumption of that time. And so I collect vintage Tupperware. So it was this full circle moment of like, how are we going to start the meal at Lulu? There's going to be a rip and dip section, and that's what it's called. And everything is just like dips, and you eat with your hands and you eat with your friends, and like it makes your cell phone kind of go away because your hands are full of dips and bread and butter. Um, and then it just started kind of evolving from there. It's a micro kitchen, zero, all induction, zero gas. And that really had to, only three human beings fit cooking at a time in that kitchen. So I had to create a menu that fit the vibe, fit the space, and while still being incredibly inspired in the immigrant community that is San Diego and my travels. So there's no limitations, there's no box that we fit in. You couldn't plant a flag. There's no, alphabetical order guidebook that we would fit in besides global or chef driven. Um, because I just didn't want any of those tags. I just, come to Lulu and be inspired. The inside feels different than the outside. It feels like outside you're in kind of this Disneyland like jungle paradise. And in the chairs look like they come alive at night, very Beauty and the Beast. And it feels warm and woodsy, like a 70s like Brady Bunch motif, like the color scheme of that like orangey brown.
Yeah. Yeah.
Grandmother's pictures are on the walls because of Lulu's age. So we said, bring the grandma's pictures of what age Lulu would be in. And so it's like our grandmothers in their 30s and 40s and or like late 20s, early 30s. And it's sexy. It's this feeling that and also ironically, or I guess coincidentally, even though I don't believe in coincidences, 90% of our diners are usually girls, and girl dinner is like the biggest thing. And so it became this beautiful safe space for women to come enjoy wine. It's not a cocktail bar. We don't have a liquor license, so it's just wine and beer. And every time I look out the dining room and it's, 90% women having dinner with their girlfriends, and I just find that to be so beautiful.
The whole time I'm thinking my wife is going to absolutely love that you refer to your restaurant as her. She's so I'm going to have to book the flights and it feels whimsical, it feels, playful.
Yeah.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking of Mad Men, right? Like what
Yes.
did people do in the 60s in their offices? There were no computers,
Yeah.
phones were tough. They
Yeah.
drank and they had fun and they
Yeah.
ideated and such. So you mentioned in that same article that I just mentioned, and I quote, it's not a restaurant or like any project I've ever done. It's a lounge, the most indie project I've ever been a part of. We're not trying to pull down the stars from the sky. We're just punk kids doing something fun. And it reminds me of Imperial Beach, where I grew up. It's a feral community. They embrace my weird. Um, you kind of talked a little bit about where the inspiration came. I read also that some of this was initiated through a random direct message um, at a Padres game, at a baseball game, which is also
Yeah.
super cool, by the way.
Yeah, my business partner, I didn't know them. I didn't know the project. I live in South Bay, which San Diego has a South Bay, LA has a South Bay, and San Francisco has a South Bay. So South Bay, San Diego, I grew up, I live in Chula Vista. And so I don't I worked in North County in 2021. I opened a hotel there. So I don't have so much context of what, who lives there, the entrepreneurs there. I didn't have that context really set in my brain, but I was at a Padre game, which I have a relationship with the Padres. They give my kids and I tickets. So I was at the last NLDS tournament or game when they were playing the Dodgers to see if they
Yeah,
would make it to the
yeah,
World
yeah.
Series last October. And unbeknownst to me, my business partner was sitting behind me with his wife and another couple of friends. And my kids and I were, just having a good time. Padres were winning. We turn around and you're high-fiving just because it's San Diego and we're all just, even if you don't know each other, you're just happy that your team's winning. And the next day, I get a DM, a direct message on my Instagram from Jason, my partner, saying, "Hey, I have this project in North County in Lucadia. I'd love to have you, to show you around. Maybe you know someone that would be interested in joining the project." The second I walked into Leu Leu, which was still like mid construction, like I said, it had been a work in progress for the last 2 years. But as soon as I walked in there, something like tapped me on the shoulder and said, "This is kind of cool." There was a picture of Marrakesh, like a poster of Marrakesh. It said on the bottom, on a table, and Marrakesh changed my life in 2014. So that was just kind of like, oh, that's weird. And then I saw something else, and I was like, that's awesome. Like it was just so many little hints were being dropped, and I said, this is what I can offer you. And I said, I still need to do the TV stuff. I still need to do my other businesses. I don't want to be necessarily, quote unquote, chained to a stove. Long story short, everything worked out. We made an agreement. Our partnership is one of the most beautiful partnerships and most like see-through, transparent partnerships where we feel something, we say something, and that's beautiful in our industry, especially as a female. And my biggest request was I wanted my name on the marquee. I said all the guys have their names on their restaurants. I would like to have my name on the restaurant. And they all, it was a yes. And then I said, okay, the wheels, then the bus started running and really fast. By the time I signed the paper early December, we were open February 22nd. So
Wow, wow,
it
wow.
went from no kitchen, no concept to what, as soon as I walked in, I said, I know exactly who she wants to be. And I made the menu for Lulu.
Isn't it amazing sometimes when I think about like this moment in time, right? Um, Kind of the bohemian, feel, White Lotus on television. Everyone loves that, right? There's a great restaurateur here in Boulder. His name's Bobby Stuckey's got a
Hmm.
super place called Frosca. I'm sure you know Bobby. And but he's got this little restaurant in Denver called Sunday Vinyl, and it's kind of the same. It's different, but the theme is that his wife picks an album every night, and
Oh,
they
cool.
spin the real album, right, for the
Yeah.
music. And yeah, we're going to talk about music and motorcycles in a little bit. By the way, that's like a must on the ultimate dish. But coming back to the menu, and it's all kind of making sense to me. I'm wondering, are there any sentimental dishes that, I mean, it's hard to put a menu together, right? You have to think about your guests, and you had a certain vibe here. But
Mhm.
are there some dishes or some accoutrements or some wines that just had to be there, no compromise, that maybe link to a special memory or, cooking with your mom, that kind of thing?
Well, there's a couple things. I'm really obsessed with details. This is also the smallest restaurant I've ever worked on. So when I say we did 90 covers for Mother's Days, I'm used to doing like 500 covers for Mother's.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was also a very conscious choice of saying yes to this project because I said I never wanted to do another big restaurant again because it's just cost prohibitive in this current climate of making money in restaurants. You just don't make money in those big restaurants. It's really hard, at least. Um, and so when I was making the menu, I wanted to, I always think about the people making the food. So I think of my cooks. I think if I'm not going to be there full time, how am I going to make them not miserable? How am I going to help them succeed and be able to my name's attached to the project, so be able to represent me in the best form possible. So the menu started developing basically of like what I want to eat. What would I cook for my friends at my house? And the very first thing that I remember eating, and I wrote an article in Food and Wine a couple years ago on aguachiles. And aguachiles is a, raw seafood dish that is very popular in the north. It started in Sonora, and so I did this, feature on Food and Wine magazine on aguachiles, and it is the first thing that I remember eating as a child, but with my father. So that is always kind of a staple on my menus. It just changes in the food combinations and flavor combinations. Um, and I started playing with aguachiles and what they could be and moving the needle forward in our generation of Mexican chefs making Mexican food in the US and in the world. And so right now we have a coconut aguachile with a lemongrass broth that is it's kind of the tie-dye effect. I'm really inspired by fashion. So whenever I think of like color palettes and colorways, I also kind of bring that back to food and music. So that Wachita is definitely one of those like a starting point time and place dishes that I know exactly where I need to be at with those flavor profiles because they remind me of my father. They remind me of my childhood in Tijuana. So that's always a staple in my restaurants. And for Lulu, it's the Fabergé egg. I was just talking about this with one of my with my cooks the other night as we're moving to transition some of the menu dishes off and bring new ones on. And we have a dish called the Lulu's Fabergé egg. And when I was little, my aunt, my mom's sister, used to paint faux Fabergé eggs with real eggs, and she is an amazing artist. And I remember them all being in her like a buffet and encased in these little eggs, and they were very intricate. And I said, what if we do something about a Fabergé egg just came to my mind. And so it's an egg, a perfect egg, a 6-minute egg, wrapped in sushi rice that's seasoned and then coated in panko, deep fried, sitting on top of a mound of Wagyu tartare that is dressed with a sort of like tartar sauce, like lobster roll sauce on top of the
Hmm.
sweet and
Hmm.
sour glaze. So it was just like for me, it's my whole like immigrant kid childhood in a bite of Chinese flavors mixed with textures mixed with Japanese rice. Like it makes no sense, but it is so delicious. And we serve it with nori that you can make a little hand roll with. So that's become Lulu's staple, because that's how I like to eat. I like to eat with my hands, and I like to eat with um, very varied textures. That's on the food side. And then when you walk in, I mean, Noelle's been there, but when you walk into the restaurant, first thing that I see when I walk through and I own the place is the vintage Tupperware pickle container. If anyone remembers what those pickle containers like, it has a specific name even, but I can't think of it right now. But it's a colander. So it's a square container that you lift the little thing and the juice stays on the bottom and all the pickles come up. Every Mexican household had one of those growing up. So when you order a rip and dip, you get a vintage pickle container with your vegetable escabeche in it.
You know, it's interesting though, but when you talk about the Fabergé egg, and it's maybe because it just came to your mind, but from, when I think about the Fabergé egg, I also think about, the Brady's house and that sort of architecture and those colors,
Yeah.
right? And maybe what people are talking about in the office in the 60s while they were, sneaking a gin and tonic, right?
Or
At two
not sneaking,
o'clock.
very,
Oh,
very obviously drinking.
right, right. You know, um, when you mentioned, you know, um, your attention to fashion, it took me back to My father's a master pastry chef, so I kind of grew up in his kitchen. He was obsessed with the bathrooms,
Mm,
and not necessarily from a wallpaper, because back then wallpaper was really fashionable, right? But more from a cleanliness. Had to feel clean, candles, had to smell, it's a sign that, people care that you're
yeah.
coming to their restaurant, their house to eat.
Hmm.
There's another super cool restaurant here in Boulder called Basta, and one of the things I love about Basta is their bathrooms. This beautiful sort of kind of an Asian theme, black wallpaper with white lotus flowers and stuff. And it's always just fascinating to me. And they have cool music, playing when you go in. So I don't know where I read it, but I read something about a really cool bathroom outside of the restaurant. Is that correct? Or
For Lulu?
for Lulu?
Yeah, our restaurant is it's in the patio. So you walk kind of outside of the building and it's there. And the designers that we worked with, Design Four Corners, did a beautiful job. It basically mirrors from the top to the bottom and like a Moroccan light. And another thing that I'm very intentional in is the accoutrements inside of the bathroom. So I have floss, I have mouthwash because
No.
we have a garlic doom. So it's like, well, it's delicious. It's the most popular rip and dip we have, but also like maybe only one of you have it, so you don't want to add the garlic breath. So we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
wash
yeah.
in the bathroom. We have chiclets, like the border four little gums.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh,
Uh,
chills. Wow.
yeah, so we have all of those things that I think, we have, sanitary products for women in there that we pay, it's on us. But I just think it's really important. Those feminine details, it's just what sets you apart. And we don't do it to be different. We do it to, I mean, it's for me how my moral compass works. At El Jardín, I had a diaper station in the females restroom, in the women's restroom, where it was a full like actual table, a changing table. And then in the men's restroom, I also had a hanging changing table. I said, because dads change diapers too.
Yes,
Um,
they do.
it's like those little things to me, I don't do it to be different necessarily or to catch attention. I do it just because I'm aware that humans need these things when they go and eat.
I mean, it's so thoughtful, just like the surprise inside the Fabergé egg, the dental floss, there's the first date at the
Hmm.
restaurant and the spinach that gets caught in the teeth, right? Why not make that comfortable for people? I love that. I absolutely love it. How do you how how do you balance running a new restaurant, all the ideas, the customer experience with all of the other things, pun intended, that are on your plate at any given time? Do you have a right-hand person or two right-hand people? Do you have people you trust, or is this all you?
No, well, I think it varies. Thankfully, the projects flux in very organic ways at the moment. So it is all me at the moment. I don't have a sous chef that is with me full time. I have a traveling sous who's amazing and she is with me on the projects that I go in when I launch out of San Diego. But on my day-to-day ops, it is just me at the moment. So it's me being creative and also me trying to keep my business bearings in mind. And, you know, I think of it is definitely rubber's hitting the road, I should say, with needing someone to help me really take the reins because I'm starting another project here in the summer. We get the keys to the airport project with Tony Hawk. Um,
Oh,
but
no way. No way.
yeah,
Wow.
so
Wow.
it's, you know, no complaints. They say I read this thing that says, I can't complain. I'm not going to complain of what's on my plate because my goal was to eat. And I think that really resonated with me. So I'm still at the moment above water. And thankfully, in my spiritual journey and my like healing journey, I am able to wave that white flag and ask for help. But so far, it's been sustainable with just me being the creative uh, captain, so to speak.
All the thought leaders and rock stars that we speak with, there's a theme, there's entrepreneurship, and I always try to be super, super respectful and never underestimate all of the work that went into what we're talking about today. The years, the sometimes challenges to seize these opportunities, right? There's money, there's worrying about your staff. And so I always say that. I premise the question of what advice you might give to a young entrepreneur, always remembering that it won't happen by 3 o'clock this afternoon, right? And it won't happen probably by next Tuesday. But
Mhm.
what would you like? Where's a good starting point on that list of priorities for someone who wants to be you?
I would tell them to see a psychiatrist and see why they want to be me. It is a wild place to be.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that I've learned that I've learned for myself at least over the last few years, and again in my spiritual journey and healing, um, past scars of our industry and like how do I advocate for myself is saying no. It is the most important sentence
Hmm.
because no is a full sentence. And not being afraid to say no because you're going to miss an opportunity. What is for us won't miss us. And that is my biggest lesson that I've learned is champion others, and championing others does not take away from you and your plate and what is coming to you. It actually helps breed a community and a sense of camaraderie that we need, especially the more our, quote unquote stars rise, is you need to have a really strong village and that anchors you to the ground because it's very easy to get lost in it. And um, gratitude, saying no and gratitude have been two of the biggest things that have helped me keep my head above water and really focus on what do I want and where do I see myself, seeing that, like manifesting what is coming in the future. I'm present, but I'm also visualizing the human I want to be, and um, the doors that I want to help keep open, prop open for the next generation. And when you rise up, you reach back. And that's something that, I learned with Gavin. And um, to be a leader doesn't mean to berate and to point fingers. It is to bring people with you, walk amongst them, not in front of them. So that is, I think, as a leader, no matter whether you own a sandwich shop or you own a giant restaurant that's being with accolades from everyone, it's, are you being authentically you, or are you trying to be what everyone else thinks they want you to be?
Mhm. Mhm.
And for me, authenticity is really personal.
So well said. So well said. I want to share another quote. So many quotes. And this is from you. My favorite memories revolve around food, and I love that we as chefs can create memory time capsules. Beautiful. You know that feeling when you eat something and it transports you back to a time and a place, wherever that is. I want to offer a trip into the past or a new memory to access the future. So, with that as a backdrop, we are going to have you take us back to your childhood, living close to the border in San Diego of Mexico. What was that experience like from a food memory perspective? And did that upbringing inspire some of your menus today?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh, so as a border kid, my mom was born in I I was raised by two very polar opposite upbringings. My mother comes from a very low socioeconomic family from Jalisco, but they traveled all over Mexico to make a living. My grandfather was a carpenter and was a nurse. Like he was kind of jack of all trades. My grandmother had no schooling whatsoever, but for some reason was very, very quick-witted and sharp as a freaking nail, and taught herself how to read, how to write, became a nurse, I mean, her story is also incredible. And then you have my dad's side, which was an educated, my dad was sent to military school at the age of 7 and till the age of 18. And then my
Wow.
grandfather was an entrepreneur of molinos throughout Jalisco and Nayarit, or through Nayarit, and then my family moved to Jalisco. So you have these two, opposites where my father comes from education. He graduated from La Universidad Autónoma Guadalajara and then went to LA in the 60s. So by the time he gets to Tijuana, he had this very evolved palate, and my mother was a single mom of two working at a bank, and my grandmother cooked for my brother. So my mom didn't really know how to cook. My dad comes from this like kind of educated family in Mexico, lands in LA in the 60s, Haute Cuisine, Wolfgang Puck, all these things were happening in LA, lands in TJ with this very interesting palate and meets my mother who doesn't know how to cook. And he would, force her to kind of push herself to out of the box. And he would say, I want this, and I want Swedish meatballs today, and I want Chinese chicken salad, and you should watch TV. So he would put on KPBS, and we would, as kids, Julia Child and Jacques Pepin, and all the BBC shows were always in the backdrop, and that's how we learned how to speak English. And so all these food memories come from my father being this very whimsical character where if it was the last $5 he had in his pocket, we would use it to eat something cool or something interesting. And he would go to he would find in a bodega, this random international bodega in Tijuana, that he would find a can of escargot. He would land at the house and be like, Vieja, make me escargot. And my mom's like, we're eating snails? Like my mom was rice, beans, video, like Mexican. And she's like, you want me to cook you snails? How am I gonna? So it was Joy of Cooking was on our counter. There's some magazine clippings. It was just like this chaos with my mom trying to appease my father's palate. But what that did was it made us, we were of the eat it and wear it family. Um, so we never could say no. It was always like, oh, now we're having steamed artichokes with drawn butter. And then another day we would go to my dad's, their best friends had an Italian restaurant. They were Roman, immigrant Italian from Rome, immigrated into Tijuana, and they had a Italian restaurant called Victorio's. And Victorio's had very like red sauce joint, the gingham tablecloths with slightly plastic on top. But it was in Tijuana, so we had the best. I learned the flavors of Italy through carbonara and cacio e pepe and best pizza. And I would fill the cheese and the peppers and all of the little tables and the wax dripping off those like red, the ones I'm talking about. And so I had all these characters, and I think that that's what made in a border region where the world truncates itself and bottlenecks of everyone wanting to either make a living in Mexico at the border, which is very, very eclectic, and there's lots of different cultures that make Tijuana a home. And the ones that want to cross over, but they can't, so they end up staying there. So Tijuana is this beautiful human quilt of there you can eat Russian food, Korean food, Chinese food, Japanese food. Chinese food, in my opinion, is the best Sichuan Cantonese food you can get is in the border region between Tijuana and Mexicali and Calexico. Um, so that's what makes me me. I am a chameleon. I am ethnically ambiguous. Everywhere I've been around the world, they don't really know where I'm from. And that helps me blend into places and be unassuming, but while absorbing everything. And that's what it felt like as a child. I was just, wide-eyed, listening to the accents and the smells and the flavors. And when you grow up in Tijuana, you can wake up and smell charcoal burning as they're getting ready to feed the people that are in the industrial areas. And the gas smells mixed with the, carne asada. It's the only other place that I have felt at home in that sense is India and Marrakesh. And that is why you see yourself, you can feel like your bones recognize certain places and
Yeah,
felt,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it just felt so eerily familiar. And I'm like, I feel safe here because growing up in TJ, it was just like, foo, 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 like just this fear and loathing in Las Vegas kind of like trip. But if you grow up in that environment, it makes any other environment seem kind of low key, and
Okay,
it
yeah.
affects how I cook because all these flavors were in my life.
I love that. I love that. I know exactly that sensation that you're expressing about your bones feel okay, home, right?
Hmm.
You worked in kitchens across the area, San Diego. Another great quote, I resisted putting tacos on my menu at first because I didn't want to distract from the rest of the narrative. That's powerful. What was your fear at that time?
Our philosophy, I would say the modern Mexican chef philosophy in my generation of cooks is I don't one we don't you can go to any Mexican restaurant in Mexico City, you don't see tacos on a menu because there's taqueros in the corner. Why would we take business from them? Like that's what they do. Their entire life revolves around making tacos. Um and in America, in the United States, I should say, in the United States, we already have such a small, narrow-minded view of what Mexican cuisine is. How am I going to move it forward if I'm just doing what everyone thinks I should be doing, and offering it at prices that uh, an American restaurant, a United States restaurant needs to be able to make their margins. And imagine if I made tacos for $2, what people think the value of it is. And I have, young chefs that I need to pay livable wages to. It's just the economics never mathed. So it was you could build your own taco because in our culture, everything's a taco. Literally, when you grow up, your mom tells you
Sure.
there's food on the stove, make yourself a taco. Like we say that, haz un taco. Because everything in a tortilla becomes a taco, like anything you put in it. So I wanted to remove that vernacular from my restaurants because there's a time and place for tacos, and it wasn't going to be in one of my restaurants because it's just I wanted to paint with a broader brush.
Can I just I have to gather myself here. I got very emotional. And I'm ashamed of myself in a strange sort of way because the way you just articulated that, and this is not on the script, everyone, believe me, I never thought of it that way.
Mm,
I never, shame on me. I never thought of what I thought of, and what a lot of people think of is we'll use taco as an example. Got to have this great taco on the menu because that's what resonates with people. But yet, that family that's been creating tacos on the street for generations, that's where it belongs. I mean, that's very beautifully said. I'm not doing it justice, but I want you to know emotionally, you've touched me with that. And my narrative is changing just in this hour that I'm spending with you. Really, really beautiful. Another article. You write a lot, or people quote you a lot, chef. So, this comes from Bon Appetit. Sorry for the emotion. Food is love, right? Borders are just man-made parameters that close people in. I don't like parameters around my life or my food. That's why the word fusion doesn't mean anything to me. Everything is fused together already. Instead, and I've heard this before, I love this. Instead, I like to think of food as a tribute to, like
mhm,
like the taco from the stand in Tijuana. I
mhm,
do tributes wherever I go. Like I see you. You have
mhm,
this.
mhm.
Well, we have this. Let's make it something beautiful. That I'm going to come back to Lulu again. Is this the tapestry of that restaurant? This is how your philosophy and your way of thinking has been woven into the menu and the mantra
Yeah.
at Lulu, right? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, something also that people don't really consider is, if I say I'm a Mexican restaurant, that comes with a lot of personal biases that I am not willing to participate in other
mm,
people, in my diners. And what we fail to also understand as a human race and give credit to is that Mexico was the original American dream. Europe there was articles all over newspapers in Europe saying go to Mexico. They have so many natural resources and set up businesses and come back. Well, people went on a boat and they landed in Veracruz in the ports and they never went back home. So what that did is we were the first, dream country that people would land in from Europe, and would dream. And what it did was it created a quilt of uh diversity and flavor marriages that we don't really see across other continents and countries as well
sure,
as
yeah,
Mexico, because Mexico is huge and it has microclimates from the north to the south that make it one of the most diverse pieces of land in the world. And I prefer to use the word marriages because these are things that came together consciously through some, not so great times and not so great circumstances. What thrived was the flavors and the meanings at the table. And fusion, I think of metal when I think of the word fusion, the 70s, just it doesn't do it justice because it's two things that don't belong being forced together by extreme heat and, melted together. That's what I think of fused. And when I think of a marriage, I think of a very conscious decision to shake hands and to say, I see you, what you have, I have what I have. Where do we come together and come up with this most delicious thing that we can? And the majority of what people consider classical Mexican or authentic, traditional, all that stuff, it is very, very unique to a family. You can have 10 moles or 10 albondigas in the same city block, and each one of them tastes very different because that
Mm-hmm.
makeup is very different. My family in Guadalajara is they're half Greek. So they have a very interesting, like they eat differently than the family in Nistorio, who is Mexican Jewish or Afro Mexican or, Italian Mexican. All of these humans actually live in our country and have made Mexican cuisine the most global cuisine, in my opinion, that I've ever had. And how amazing is that? Let's celebrate it instead of calling out our differences. We should really say how similar we all are. There's African dishes that are pretty much textbook. What you eat in Mexico, we just call it a different thing.
Yeah, yeah. Every time I see the word Claudette, the name Claudette, and going forward in my life, I'm going to think of the word humility. I just
Mm.
absolutely love this conversation. I have another quote, and again, emotional. My dream was to be off food stamps and not have to tell my kids we're playing hide and seek with the lights off because I couldn't pay the light bill. That's as big as I was dreaming. So, chef, you found this deep motivation to succeed, be a great mom and a great role model. Can you tell us a little bit more about Viva La Vida, um, and how you're giving back to others? We're both going to start crying here in a minute.
Uh, yeah, I'm gonna try to. I'm like pinching myself to distract
Yeah.
myself. Um, you
Long
know,
live love.
Yeah. Viva la vida is obviously a very famous Frida Kahlo quote. I even have it tattooed on my arm. Live life to the fullest. She died in
Yes. Yeah.
1954, and coincidentally, my mother was born in 1954. So it's always resonated to me of like maybe she's my mother reincarnated. Like that's I would the story I tell myself. But what I noticed when I was building El Jardín in 2018 and 2019 was the women. The women, again, something tapped me in the shoulder, an ancestral wisdom, I'll call it, of, we're really the secret. Like we are the Pandora's box of an entire country. It's within me, within my daughter, within my grandmother and my great grandmother. And they say there's 2,000 women that come before you that are imprinted in your womb. It's the fingerprints of 2,000 other women. Um, and I would buy ingredients. I really made it. I tried to find out what made Mexican cuisine so special, and it was really the dirt that the ingredients grow in. So at El Jardín, I would import, I should say, about 30% of the dry ingredients was me going to Mexico, finding the purveyors and having them ship it to Tijuana, and then I, cross it in my car. But what was the common theme was in these markets, it was all women that I was dealing with. And half of them, I would say, how do I transfer money to you? And then half of them would say, well, send it to my son. And I said, I don't really feel comfortable sending it to your son. I would like to send it to you. And so kind of a sidebar, I've had to moonlight in a lot of different other jobs in my life, in my children's lives. And one of the jobs that I had in 2010 to 2013 was I was a bookkeeper for a nonprofit that had offices in Africa, Mexico, Thailand. And I was a bookkeeper. So I was really good at numbers. I'm a very A-type creative. And I learned the micro saving loan programs that work through USAID, and I kind of try to take that model and it's like, how do I help women establish financial businesses in Mexico, or how do I help them be financially independent, and how to keep books and how to do that transactional stuff, how to keep a ledger. So I started just asking questions and finding the right ingredients with the right women that were interested in financial literacy. and kind of had little hubs of planting seeds of you can do this. You don't need your son. You can do this. You don't need your husband. This is your money. You made it. This is for you. And it really comes down to me being who I wish I had when I was a young mother. I remember being told that I wasn't going to graduate high school because I was in a self-study program. I was missing 3 credits, and the counselor for the learning center at my high school at Mar Vista basically said, "You're not walking." And I said, "I'll show you." It's like, okay, is that what we're doing? We're going to underestimate me? I got you. Because I was working full time. Literally, I was working 40 hours a week by the time I was a senior in high school. And I said, okay, watch me. And 2 days later, I came back with all 3 credits. And then she tried to tell me that I did it too fast and I wasn't going to walk still. I said, absolutely not. What are you crazy? Like, you think I had someone to do it for me? Like, who's going to do this homework for me? I did it because it's not that I couldn't. It's just I was working full time. Anyways, I did walk. And then I remember wanting to go to culinary school about 6 months later and walking in with my baby in a stroller. And she said, laughed at me. That same counselor laughed at me. And she said, you should just do a vocational training school, go be a nurse's assistant. Culinary school, you're never going to make it. And then the moment of little Claudette being underestimated. And I said, okay, watch me. And now we're here talking about that moment. But all of those things were leading me and like were the building blocks of who I wanted to become and who I didn't want. I mean, and she was just one example of women that underestimate women, young girls. And I would walk into my social worker's office, with my head down, so embarrassed that I had to ask for food stamps and had to ask for cash aid. And I realized something, once I got out of it, is the system is rigged for you to stay in it forever. That's why women keep having children. And it's like, it's a prison. It's a gilded prison they keep you in. And God forbid you work 1 extra hour because then they take half of your cash aid away. And then so you're stuck. You're like, okay, well, I can never work full time because the government has you by shackles saying like, nope, you're going to stay in this socioeconomic level. And you better never make one more penny because we'll take away all your medical benefits. And so your family is like, you can't transverse that curve fast enough to be on the other side to be able to have benefits for all your children. So you're just in this loop. And I found that to be so predatory. So Viva La Vida was, how do I help women and girls believe in themselves and set themselves up for a future of not needing it? I don't want to be an emergency cash fund. I want to be a preemptive solution. Like, how do you avoid the emergency? How do you set someone up of like, do you even know where you spend your money? Because I remember getting my first paycheck. I blew my credit when I was 18 because they gave me a credit card for $500 and I was like, oh, free money? Amazing. Just didn't understand what it was. So that's where Viva La Vida really was the seed that was planted, was the women in Mexico not believing that they should have their own money and should have their own I can't even think of the word in English, but their own a bit their own coffee can, so to speak. Like
Yeah,
they didn't have
it's
agents.
it's a freedom in so many ways too. I love the concept of financial literacy, that it all starts with that, just educating. The teacher will educate. The teacher will educate. The fact that and again, we go back to, you're busy. You've
Mhm.
got a lot going on, and that you prioritize giving back to those who are on a path that you were once on it's so commendable. It's absolutely amazing. Financial literacy is that crosses borders. Everyone has to understand financial literacy. How do I get here? How do I get out of here? How do I stay here? So bravo, bravo, bravo for all that, and much more success. I have no idea where the last hour went, and there's no way I'm done yet. I mentioned earlier, so many people that I chat with that are in this space, food, there's music. Somehow, some way there's music. And then
Mhm.
often there's motorcycles. So I always have to ask, which is it? Or is it both? Is music a part of your life?
No, huge.
Yeah.
Music has the same power for me that food and fashion do. It really transports me to a time and place. I have a soundtrack for every different chapter of my life. Certain voices remind me that this isn't my first time here. I listened to Jimi Hendrix riff on a guitar, or Jimmy Page and Janis Joplin sing Kaleidoscope, like blues, and like you listen to these voices and there's so much wisdom there, and they're saying more than they're singing. It's a feeling, and it's an emotion. I remember writing a whole menu to Wu-Tang Clan's 36 Chambers. It's like poetry in lyricist's ability to make you feel seen, and they give you the words that you didn't think you needed. And something about the 70s for me has always resonated. Incredibly deep reactions, poetry, which is the best songwriters, singers are also poets, the
They're
Dylans of the
poets, yeah.
world, and
I think I knew what you were gonna. I knew music was a a part of your life. I don't know if you could see it behind me, but I, chefs are rock stars in my mind. Some ride motorcycles, some don't, but all love music. And I've got U2, I've got Fleetwood Mac, and I'm giving away my age. Bob Seger. These just small album covers. It's just such a nice conversation starter, right? I can remember my first concert when I was
yeah,
younger, and I'll go to more. We saw one of the last shows of the Dead, the touring with John Mayer and those guys, and they brought Dave Matthews on stage for the last act. I mean, it's like I thought my wife was going to lose her mind. But it's,
yeah,
it transports you, right? And, just like Bobby does at his restaurant. So you come in to have a beautiful meal, but that song and that menu might take you somewhere you didn't expect, right? Like
yeah.
this show has taken me many places that I didn't expect. Before I let you go, Claudette, the name of the show is The Ultimate Dish. So there's no way you can leave us without telling me in your mind what is the ultimate dish.
The ultimate dish. I always say the last meal on earth I want to have is my mom's albondigas cooked by her, and her arroz con leche. So you're about to cook my childhood when you get your recipe. Please let me know how you like it. But that makes me, I mean, I'm 41 this year, and I still have my mommy come over to my house and cook this for me. I can make it, but hers tastes better.
Of course
So
it does.
my ultimate dish is a stack of fresh tortillas, with albondigas, and staring at my kids' faces as they eat it, and kind of remember, like, that's how I felt when I was a kid eating it. And it's a very specific dish that it doesn't taste like anything else. It has mint, but it has tomato, but it has oregano, but it has chile. It has a hard-boiled egg in it, which is like a Scotch egg, but it's not. Like, where did this come from? I honestly stopped asking a long time ago, because I rather be present and enjoy it than ask the whys for that dish.
Perfect answer. And I knew that you would blend a memory
Mm.
or a feeling or a moment into your ultimate dish.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chef, for spending some time with us. Apologies for the emotion. Very,
No,
very
thank you.
meaningful chat today. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Chef. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast to find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. And if you can, please leave us a rating on Apple or Spotify and subscribe to support our show. This helps us reach more aspiring individuals ready to take the next step toward their dream careers. Thanks for listening.